Okay, hello YouTube, hello Internet, hello world. I'm here with a new video. This is a video that I've done before. It's a very long video that I've made before, but basically, when I was reading Revelations of the Bible, I somehow stumbled upon wanting to connect the chakras with the seven deadly sins. And I think the real spark that sparked all of this for me was connecting the seven churches of God with the chakras, with the seven deadly sins. And so this video that I have here is basically a miniaturized version of the previous video I made. I think it would be a useful video for anyone who's looking for any kind of metaphysics. I'm not here to claim that my ideas are correct, but I am here to basically talk about something that is interesting to me, something that gives me a little bit of peace of mind. And I have found that in stressful situations, it's helped me a lot in at least keeping my mind busy. And so this is where the video begins. So, where do I start? Um, I have the seven chakras here on the left. To the right, I have a table, which is the connection between chakras and the seven deadly sins. And then I guess I could also throw in, if I want to, um, the uh, the seven churches as well. And so let's go ahead and do that. Um, I'm going to insert another column, and then we'll merge this. So actually, this video will be titled Connections Between Chakras, Seven Deadly Sins, and Seven Churches of God. And I found this to be an interesting exercise because in Revelations, anyone who's read Revelations, you'll know that there's a big emphasis on these seven major religions of the world. That's my interpretation. I used to think that there was only five religions of the world. That would be major religions, that is. That would include things like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, and Hinduism, right? Those are the big five, but I believe there's actually seven, and I think they actually relate to the seven churches. And so, what are the seven churches according to Revelations? The first one is Ephesus. The second one is Smyrna. The next one is Pegamos, not Peg your mom, Pegamos. The next one after that is Tira. The one after that is Sardis. The one after that is Philadelphia, which is interesting. I don't know why it's called Philadelphia, but it is. And then the one after that, the last one, is Laodicea. I believe that's correct. And so, what did I believe? Well, what did I used to think? How do the major religions relate? Um, I can tell you. But I believe Ephesus are the Christians because of the technology, basically. Smyrna, I believe, is Hinduism, and there's like an interesting play on words that go with Hinduism, but basically it's the religion of wisdom. That's my understanding. Um, Pegamos, I haven't really been able to figure out which one that is, but I'll get back to that. Tira, which is the one that has a lot of authority, to me is Islam. Sardis is also another mysterious one, but it is the fifth church, and I believe it is the church of personal power. I don't know if it's a single religion, though. Philadelphia, clear as day, because they speak about the Star of David. Um, is that correct? Star of David? I believe the Star of David is the chastity belt. To me, this is Judaism. And then the last one, it has to be Buddhism, I'm pretty sure. Now, what are these last two? We've identified five. I'm not exactly sure, but my guess, and this is a wild guess, that Pegamos somehow is Zoroastrian. That's my guess, which is a religion that originates in Persia. But it basically, apparently, it's not a religion, but rather a philosophy. And I think the way they communicate the idea of good and evil seems to resonate a lot here. And then we also have Sardis, And my guess was that this is the Dine, which is a uh, it is a religion, but it's one that expands a lot through Central and North America and even parts of South America. That's my understanding of what the Dine are. They're more formally known as the Navajo, but you get the idea. And so that's what I have so far. But you got these seven major churches, each one being a religion of God. And the question is now, how do they tie to the chakras and how do they tie to the seven deadly sins? And that's the main purpose of this video. And that's really what I want to get to. I love the color coding of the chakras because it's first of all, it's the rainbow. And I think these colors resonate a great deal with what I'm trying to talk about, what I'm getting at. Um, and so let's dive in. I've made this video before. I believe it's a video that talks about the mark of the beast. That's a really deep dive into Revelations. It's a 3 hour long video, so I don't expect many people to watch it. This video is simply meant to be kind of a summed up version and probably the most valuable content that I've been able to build, discover, design, come up with as a metaphysicist. And I think that's why I'm making this video, is so that anyone who wants to see any future videos that I make or wants to see older videos that I have, really, if there's any video that you should watch on this channel, it's probably this one. Okay, so let's talk about the chakras. Here I have a picture. It describes the chakras pretty well. The first one is the crown, and it's one that basically floats above your head. That's my understanding. And it says here it's knowledge, consciousness, fulfillment, spirituality, and basically it says I understand. I'm not going to get in too much into the smaller details here. I just want to make this video a relatively short video, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. But the first idea is I understand. And when it comes to believing in God, simple as that, I understand God. Which may be a bit hubris to say, actually, to even claim that anyone can understand God. But maybe it's an attempt to want to understand God, something along those lines. The next one is I see. This is a reference to the third eye. I actually don't think this is the third eye here at the top, on the forehead. Apparently, it's the third eye between the brow. There's something going on there that I don't really know the full details of, but my understanding is that this is something right here between the brow. It is not here at the center of your forehead. But basically, it's I see. Then we have the throat. This is the way you communicate. It has this color, which resonates a lot. Maybe this is actually where the dine lie, is in the throat. And then maybe so Zoroastrians, they're actually the ones here for the solar plexus, which is, I believe, where the idea of personal power resonates, is here in the solar plexus. At the center, we have the heart. And I think this actually ties in really nicely with the idea of something like Islam and its power of authority. If there's any religion that I can think of that is willing to show the greatest amount of wrath in the name of God, it's Islam. And so we're going to get to the seven deadly sins in a moment, talking about how each of the chakras has its counterpart sin. But basically, here at the heart is where the wrath lies. But anyways, it says here, I love. Then we have I do. The solar plexus is all about taking action. It's about, using movement to gain power. And so I think when it comes to physical feats, the solar plexus is really where all the energy lies. When it comes to sexuality, the most sexual of all of the chakras is by far this one here, the sacra, also known as the sacra, which I believe is the sac. And literally it says, I feel. And then finally, we have this last one here, which is the root, which is I am. And so we have the crown, the brow. I actually think it's not just the third eye, but rather the brow right here. We have the throat, the heart, the solar plexus, the sacra, and the root. Those are the seven. And so we can write those here right now. Crown, brow. That was the original one I saw. And so we're gonna stick to that, which is brow. We have the throat, heart, solar plexus, sacre, or as I like to call it, the sac, and then the root, right? And I love the root because the root, I believe, is right at your tailbone. And you can see with this figure, the way they're sitting, it's right here at the bottom. And the idea is that if we had a tail, we would own the place. And since we humans don't have tails, all we're left with is this root. And so it does tie into like the most primitive animalistic part of ourselves. And this is where the seven deadly sins come in so nicely. And so we'll start with the bottom, we'll start with the root. What is the sin of your root? And if you have an imbalance there or something of that nature, the idea is pride, right? And like a pride of lions, our most animalistic part of ourselves starts at the root. It starts at where we would grow a tail if we were, to any degree, closer to being animals than we already are. That would be where we have pride. Then, when it comes to the sacre, you can take a wild guess. Since that's the one with sexuality, this is where lust would exist, um, and which is another seven deadly sin. Being lustful, overindulging in sexual desires or sexual acts, and so forth. Now, what about solar plexus? This is the idea of personal power. If you don't have this inner power, and if you don't have this ability to find energy from within, what are you left with? You're going to be left with envy. You're going to be envious of other people because you don't actually have a source of inner power yourself. Boom, that's another seven deadly sin. What about the heart? I talked about this, and it's wrath. If you are not able to get rid of your anger, if you're not able to get rid of your anger from within, what are you left with? You're going to be left with wrath. And wrath could be argued as the root of all evil. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's wrath. I'm not entirely sure. But the idea here is that at the heart of it all, um, at the heart of your inner self, let's call it, you are at risk of being wrathful. What about the throat? This is where communication is everything. And I do believe that the seven deadly sin that corresponds to um, poor communication, abused communication, a type of communication that you're using to manipulate, I believe this is being greedy. You're being greedy with your tongue, you're being greedy with your word. And again, if you read Revelations and you learn about the angels that uh, pertain to each of these churches, they're extremely detailed and extremely fascinating. I highly recommend that you take a read. But the angel for the Pergamos is an angel so, uh, um, with a double-edged sword coming out of its mouth. And so, to me, that suggests that if you are talking, you are basically greedy, or you are at risk of being greedy with that double-edged tongue that we all seem to have. And then what about the brow? I believe here the seven deadly sin is gluttony, and it's basically the idea that maybe did I spell that? I spelled that wrong with an O. The idea is you are what you eat, and so if you this applies to knowledge as well. So if you consume poor knowledge, you are at risk of having poor wisdom. And so to me, that basically is probably the truest form of being gluttonous is not necessarily physically by eating lots of body fat. Humans have had body fat for thousands, millions of years as a survival tool, but it actually starts with the knowledge that you consume. And so I think that uh, is where that seven deadly sin lies. And then the final one, and this is arguably the easiest or the hardest, but it's sloth. When it comes to the crown, this is the idea of seeking God, of wanting to understand God, of pursuing wisdom, knowledge in the name of God. And basically, I think that the crown, what it really is about, maybe more than pursuing knowledge and pursuing wisdom, which is really more for the brow, what we have here is having faith. And so if you don't have faith in God, which is arguably the easiest thing that any human being can wake up and decide to do, consciously decide, or at least through their will, if free will is even such a thing, um, is to have faith in God. And so that's something that you can say, you know what, I wake up, I'm going to have faith in God, even if I don't know what or who God is. And so that takes an act of, that takes effort. And I would argue that not taking that effort is being lazy. It's a kind of laziness. And that's really where I think sloth would arrive at or manifest as a sin is if you're lazy in deciding to believe in God, because there's so many things to believe in the world. There's so much to learn about the world. You're effectively being slothful in a real sense. And so that's the point of this video. I hope this video is of help. I highly recommend reading the Revelations. If you want a more detailed understanding of what I'm talking about, my metaphysics process, you can watch my 3 hour long video. It's imperfect because this is something that I was working on, but I think this is the final draft of what I have as far as the way the each of the seven deadly sins pertains to each of the chakras, and by extension, how they pertain to each of the seven churches of God. And this is what I have so far as my guess for, um, what are the actual religions of the world, um, as far as religions that have any degree of truthfulness to them. And so that's the point of this video. I hope this video was cool, fun, interesting. Give it a like, of course, blah, 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 all that good stuff. But I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you at another time. Take care.